Begin the Gemara today on Daf Yud Daled Amud Beis, 2 lines up from the bottom of the Yamud. So we're discussing over here, as the name of the Perek is, Elu Hein Aloikim, the cases where one gets Malkus. The Mishnah set a list of certain cases. So the Gemara here will continue and bring a statement from the name of Rabbi Yochanan that will connect to one of the cases of the Mishnah. So the Gemara, Amar Rabba Bar Bachane, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Kol loisese shekodma yasei loiken olav. Any loisese in the Torah where the esse comes before the loisese. In such a case, you get malchus. Okay, so what is the chiddush of Rabbi Yochanan? What is he saying? So Rashi here explains, we saw before, and the Gemara will speak about it over here on Daf Tezvav, that there's what's called a lav hanitik laasei, where the Torah says a lav, something that's forbidden, but then it gives you an esse how to correct the lav that was done. The typical example is v'heishev esagzela shagazal. If someone steals, he was over on a lav, but then it's nitik laasei, you correct it by returning the gzela. And there's other examples as well. Now, so Rabbi Yochanan though says that by a regular lav on nitik laasei, so if he's over on the lav, he doesn't get malchus because he has an option how to correct it by fulfilling the esse. But in a case where the Torah writes the lav, and the esse that there is to correct that lav is written in the Torah before the lav, in such a case, the lav is not called nitik laasei. In such a case, he will get malchus for being over on this lav. That's the statement that Rabbi Yochanan said. Okay, so now...
Because the assay is written first.
Yeah, the assay is written in the Torah before the lav. By the Torah, when it writes Le'sigzal, and then it says V'heishev v'sagzela shagazal, the V'heishev v'sagzela, this assay comes after the lav. But if the assay is in the Torah before it says the lav, then it's a regular lav that one gets malchus for this. Now, Omru Loi, others went to Rabbi Yochanan and asked Rabbi Yochanan about this, because this wasn't said in the Rabbi Yochanan, it was said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Bar Bachane repeated it in his name. So others came to Rabbi Yochanan and that heard it in his name, and they asked him, Amarta, did you say this? Amar lohu loi. So Rabbi Yochanan said, no, I did not say this. So Rashi says he did say it. Rabbi Bar Bachane heard it from him, but he retracted. So therefore now he told them, no, I did not say this. That's what happened. So Omar Rabbi said about this statement that was said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Ha'alekim, which is a lashon of a shvua, that I can guarantee you 100% that Omra, Rabbi Yochanan originally did say this. And not only this, Uksiva, it says this in a pasuk, V'tanina, and we learned this over here in the Mishnah. If you go back to the first Mishnah of the Perek, we'll see that what Rabbi Yochanan originally said, that in such a case you don't get malchus, this is proven from our Mishnah. Where do we see this? So the Gemara says, Ksiva, which lav are we talking about where you have such a case, where first it says the esse, and then it says the lav, regarding a person that's tamei that goes into the Beis HaMikdash. So what does it say in the pasuk? First it says the esse, v'yishalchum and amachna v'gaime, that one that's tamei should be sent out of the machna. And the pasuk goes on to say, it speaks about the one that's tamei. It says kol tzerua v'chol zav v'chol tamei l'nefesh, send them out of the machna. And that's the esse. And then afterwards it says v'loi yitamu es machneim. Comes the lav that says that it should not be mitama the machna. So what do you see over here? This is a case where if one does walk into the Beis HaMikdash when he's tamei, what do you have to do? You have to be mekayim the esse and take him out, send him out. So you may think that because in this case there's a lav, but there's also a esse, what to do about this, that you send him out, so if he walks in, he shouldn't get malchus. No, but this is the case, as the Gemara will here bring right now, that it says in the Mishnah that if someone goes into the Beis HaMikdash, you do get malchus. Panina, the Mishnah said, one of the cases of the malchus was, haba lemikdash tamei. One that comes into the Beis HaMikdash and his tamei gets malchus. So this is the proof that even though there's an esse to correct the lav that he did coming into the Beis HaMikdash, but nevertheless, because the esse in the Torah says before the lav, he'll get malchus. So Rabbi says it's in pasuk, and this is the Mishnah that clearly says this. So the Gemara explains, Elamai time bei. So if that's the case, so why did Rabbi Yochanan retract of his original statement? Then in such a case, you would get malchus. Answers the Gemara, Mishum Bekashile Einis, because he had a question from a different case, from a different lav, the lav of Einis. When a person was ma'anis, a girl, he had a relation with her against her will. And there's also the same kind of thing, where there is a lav and there's an esse in the Torah there before the lav. And here there's a braisa about this. Let's see, the Tanya, the braisa says, Einis shegirish, an Einis, a person that was ma'anis, a girl, and he divorced her. What does this mean? Because, so the mitzvah saseh, that there is by one that was ma'anis this girl is v'loi siya leisha, that she should be his wife, should marry her, and that's the first the essa, and then it says lo yuchal shalcha, he's not allowed to divorce her. So the same kind of case where the Torah first says the essa and then the lav. So the Braisa says if it's a case where this person got married to her, but then he divorced her, so now he was over on the lav. He sent her away. So im Yisrael, if he's a Yisrael, machzer. So then he has to fulfill the asay and immediately remarry her. And therefore ve'ena loike, doesn't get any malchus. But im Kayin, if he's a Kayin and he divorced his wife, and a Kayin is not allowed to marry a Grusha, so now once he divorced her, he doesn't have an option of correcting this and marrying her again, loike, and ve'ena machzer. He gets malchus and he doesn't marry her again. So what do we see from this Braisa? It says, Gemara's medayik, im Yisraelu machzer ve'ena loike, if this is a Yisrael, so then he marries her again and he gets no malchus. What am I? Why is the Braisa saying this halacha? Loisese shekad me'esahu. This is an example also of a loisese where the pasuk says la yuchal shalcha, but the esse that he should marry her says first v'loisi isha. So nevertheless, this Braisa says that you don't get malchus, and this is going to be the same as a lav hanitik la'aseh, where you could correct the lav that you were over and remarry her. So it's from here that Rabbi Yochanan proved that you have to say that even in such a case where the essa and the Torah is before the lav, it's similar to a lav, a nitik la'aseh, and you don't get malchus. That was the reason why Rabbi Yochanan retracted from his first statement that in such a case you would get malchus. Okay, so the Rishonim point out over here, so how would Rabbi Yochanan answer the Mishnah that the Gemara just quoted before regarding the Tomei that comes into the Beis HaMikdash? And there the Mishnah says you do get malchus, even though he has a way how to correct that the asay of Yishalchu to send him out of the machna. So one of the answers is because over there correcting the lav doesn't really fully correct it. By this case, for example, where a person divorced his wife and now he remarries her, it fully corrects the lav that he was over. He sent her and now he marries her back. She's again his wife. By a person that was in the Beis HaMikdash when he was Tomei, and the Torah says that what do you have to do in such a case? You have to send him out. It doesn't really correct 100% the lav, because now that he was there, he already walked into the Beis HaMikdash Tomei, so he wasn't supposed to be there when he was Tomei, and it was metama the place, so to speak. Afterwards, he's sending him out. When he leaves afterwards, it doesn't correct what he did before. So therefore, it's different. In that case, the reason why he's not going to get, or the reason why over there actually he does get malchus is not only because the essa and the Torah comes before the lav. No, even if the essa comes before the lav, it's an lav hanitik la'aseh. But over there, the essa doesn't really correct the lav that he was over, that he walked into the Beis HaMikdash. That's why in that case, Rabbi Yochanan will say he gets malchus. But over here in this Braisa regarding the case of the Oines, we clearly see that the Braisa over here says that in such a case you don't get malchus. He could correct through fulfilling the essa, even though it says in the Torah the essa first. Okay, so this explains why Rabbi Yochanan retracted what he said.
So when he goes out of Beis HaMikdash, she's still tummy.
But he didn't correct what he did before. By the Heishavus Agzelas Agozal, another example, when a person steals and he gives back. So what he stole, he completely gave back. That's it. He gave it back. Mashenkin over here, he was metamed. He walked into the Beis HaMikdash Tameh. Walking out afterwards, that's afterwards. It doesn't really fully correct what he did before. That's why over there you get malchus. Okay, but now the Gemara will bring over here an answer to explain why, in this case of Oines, it's not a raya. It's not a reason for Rabbi Yochanan to retract what he said in the beginning. Amar Ola said that over here, by the case of the Oines, there is a lav that is written in the Torah even after the Asa, even though not explicitly, but the Gemara will explain how that is. And that is because lo yoimar, it does not have to say in the Torah lo yisiya leisha b'oines. By this case of a person that was ma'anis, a girl, it's not necessary for the Torah to say that he should be married to her and she should be his wife. Why not? Because v'ligmar mimaitzi shemra. This could be learned out from one that's maitzi shemra. Maitzi shemra is a person that's already married, and after he's married to his wife, he's maitzi shemra. He says that she wasn't a psula and she was mizana, and it turns out that he lied. And there as well, the Torah says v'lo yisiya leisha, that he has to remain his wife. She has to remain his wife. He remains married to her, and he's not allowed to send her away. So it says the Gemara, you could learn out this halacha of v'lo yisiya leisha from maitzi shemra. You can learn out with the following kal v'chomer. In a case where a person is married to his wife and he's maitzi shemra, it was just words that he said. He didn't do any action. The Torah says in such a case that she should be his wife. Oines, in a case where a person did an action, and it was ma'anis this girl, lo yikol shekain, definitely over here the same would apply, that she should be his wife and he's not allowed to just send her away. He goes and he's mazana with her and then he just throws her away. Definitely over here he's not allowed to send her away. So lama nemar. So why does it have to say again this esse regarding the ma'anis v'lo yisiyah li'isha? This is the Kal V'chaimer. Now the Pnei Yeshua, other Mefarshim point out this is a very interesting kind of Kal V'chaimer, because it's you can't compare B'chlal. Over here you're talking about a person that's already married. And the Torah says, the person is speaking out against his wife, don't throw her away. V'lo yisiyah li'isha, has to remain his wife. He's already married to her. We're trying to learn out with a Kal V'chaimer to the case of a Ma'anis, where this is not his wife at all. It's a girl that he was Ma'anis. And here the Gemara is saying a Kal V'chaimer that he should have to marry her and it should become his wife and be his wife. How could you compare? This is the Shaila of Pnei Yeshua. He changes the Pshat in the Gemara. He has a whole pilpul how you learn here, but this is it's a strong question, l'chayda. Okay, the Gemara will soon say in the end that we don't stay with this Kal V'chaimer. Let's see. So right now, but the Gemara is following with this Kal V'chaimer, and therefore when it says by Ma'anis v'lo yisiyah li'isha, it's extra. Could have learned it out from Moitzi Shemra. So if so, im einoi inyan lefanov, if you don't need this essa where it's written in the Torah, it's written before the lav that he's not allowed to send her away. So Taneyu inyan la'achrav, these extra words of lo yisiyah li'isha, the essa, put it after the lav. This is a cloud that you find, as we had before a few times here already. When Torah writes something and it's extra in its place, so you can use it for another subject. So over here, even though in the Torah it actually says the essa before the lav, but it's not. If it's not needed for there, so then it's as if the Torah wrote it after the lav, and that's the reason that is she'im girish, that if he divorces her, yachser, that he has to remarry her. So therefore, this is now like a regular lav hanitik la'aseh, where the Torah writes the essa after the lav. That's the reason why this Braisa says this halacha, and therefore you could still say like Rabbi Yechanan originally said, that if the S is before the lav, you get malchus, but in this case of the ma'anis, it's as if the Torah wrote the essa after the lav. Okay, but the Gemara asks on this, but vakati, this Kal V'chaimer that we learned out from Moitzi Shemra doesn't work. Einis when Moitzi Shemra loy gomer, you can't learn out from there that the essa should apply without writing it clearly by Einis. Why? Because the Ikala Mifrach, I could refute this Kal V'chaimer. Mala Moitzi Shemra, you know why by Moitzi Shemra the Torah is stringent and says that he has to keep her as a wife. Shekain loike u'mishalim. There we see the Torah is very machmer. He gets malchus and he has to pay her a knas also. Therefore, that chumrah applies that he has to remain married to her. But by ma'anis, you don't find this level of a chumrah, so how do you know to apply this mitzvah that v'lo yisiyah li'isha? So the Torah does have to say it explicitly by the ma'anis. So Ella, the Gemara tries something else. Lo yoymar lo yisiyah li'isha b'moitzi shemra. Actually, by Moitzi Shemra, I can maybe argue and say that there, it's not necessary for the Torah to say that he should remain married to her. And v'ligmar ma'anis. And I'll learn out this, that he should remain married to her from the case of the Einis, where the Torah already says, V'lo yisiyah li'isha, that he should marry her. And I'll tell you the Kal V'chaimer now on the opposite. Uma Einis, if in a case of it's just an Einis and he's not yet his wife, and over there, She'ein aleiko mishalim, Torah is not so stringent with him. He doesn't get malchus and pay. So the Torah says, V'lo yisiyah li'isha, that she becomes his wife. Moitzi Shemra, so in the case of Moitzi Shemra, where the Torah is more machmer, he's loiken, he's mishalim, loikol sheken. Definitely, the halacha should be that he has to marry her. So v'lama nema. So why does the Torah say v'lo yisiyah li'isha by Moitzi Shemra? Imeina inyan l'moitzi Shemra. So over here I'll say, if it's extra, it's not needed for the case of Moitzi Shemra. Tanei inyan la'inus. So that extra v'lo yisiyah li'isha that says by Moitzi Shemra is really intended for this case of the Einus. And then we say another point. If it's not necessary to say this, that he has to marry her before the lav that it says that he's not allowed to send her away, because it already says that here explicitly. It says v'lo yisiyah li'isha before the lav. So Tanei inyan la'achrav. So put this mitzvah say of v'lo yisiyah li'isha, which is extra by Moitzi Shemra, to our case of Einis. And after the lav, where he sent her away, the Torah is saying that he has now a essay to correct that lav and remarry her. And that's why the Braisa is saying that you don't get malchus. That's how you learn it out. But now the Gemara says, the obvious, based on what we learned before, but Moitzi Shemra me'oines nami legomer. You can't learn out Moitzi Shemra from Einis. You can't tell me that Moitzi Shemra, there's an extra pasik of v'lo yisiyah li'isha because I could learn it out from Einis. No, you can't learn it out from there. Why not? Because the Ikala Mifrach, I could refute this Kal V'chaimer. Ma'al Einis, the reason why by Einis the Torah is machmer that he has to marry her and it will be his wife. Shekin asa ma'isa. because he actually had a relation with her, he did an action. In such a case, the Torah is machmer. So I can't learn out from there to Moitzi Shemra, where it was only words, he didn't do a Maisa. So Ella, the Gemara tries something else. Lo yoimar, lo si elisha b'moitzi Shemra. It doesn't have to say, lo si elisha in the case of Moitzi Shemra, shaharei ishtahi. It is his wife, he's already married to her. So lama nemar, why does it say, v'lo si elisha, that it should be his wife? All the Torah would have to say is, lo yuchal l'shalcha. If it wants to say that he should remain married with her, if it says, don't send her away, so he has to remain married. Why does it say, lo yisi? It should be his wife. He's married to her. So why does it say? So the whole pasuk is extra. Not because he could learn it out from Einis. B'chlal, the pasuk here is extra. He's already married to her. And therefore I could say the same thing as we said before. Im ein inyan l'moitzi Shemra, if the pasuk is not needed here. Tanei inyan l'Einis, I take this pasuk and I use it for the case of Einis. And if im ein inyan l'fanav, if it's not needed there for before he sends her away. Tanei inyan l'achrav, you put it after. And that's why we have a essa after the lav. That's what the Gemara tries to say. But on this gufa, the Gemara also asks and says, no, it's not going to work. Why not? Because ve'eme, maybe I can tell you, im eine inyan lofana of the moitzi Shemra, when it says in the Torah, v'loi si leisha by moitzi Shemra, it's not necessary for the Torah to say it there because he's already married to her. But maybe taneyu inyan la'achra of didei. Maybe the words v'loi si leisha by the moitzi Shemra is needed there by moitzi Shemra itself to say that if he divorced his wife, he should remarry her, the loy lucky, and that he doesn't get any malchus. So who says that we can use this extra pasuk by moitzi Shemra and take it over to the case of Einis? It's needed by moitzi Shemra itself. Says the Gemara, you're right, and a chanami, this is true, that we need the pasuk there by moitzi Shemra itself. But then, v'asi Einis, v'gamim, then if so, we should learn out the case of the Einis, when one had a relation with a girl, let's learn it out from Moitzi Shemra that the same would apply here, that she has to remain his wife, and if he sends her, if he divorces her, or he has to marry her, and then if he divorces her, he has to remarry her, so we can learn it out from Moitzi Shemra. So again, the Gemara goes through the same point that said before. No, you cannot learn out Einis from Moitzi Shemra, because b'mai gomem minhei, how are you learning this out from Moitzi Shemra? Are you going to learn it out with the Kal V'chaimer that was mentioned before? Or Iba Matzinu, you want to just compare the two, that they're similar even without a Kal V'chaimer, but you can't learn it out. Ikele mifrach, you can refute this, and some gerses here have it. Kid Parchinan, as we already asked before. Ma'ala Moitzi Shemra is different. Sheken le'asa Maisa. Over there is no Maisa, so it's a different case. So over there, the Torah is saying that giving this leniency that after he divorces her, he's able to remarry her, and you don't get Malchus. But over here, when you get to Einis, where he did do a Maisa, who says the Torah gives you this option to correct the lav by remarrying her. Maybe if he sent her out, he's going to get Malchus, and there is no option of correcting it again. So you can't compare the two. So what comes out after this whole discussion here in the Gemara? We're back to the original question. And that is, if Rabbi Yechanan said a klal, that anytime you have an essa in the Torah, which comes before the lav, then in such a case you will get Malchus. The case of an Einis, where in the Torah it says first the essa, v'loi si l'isha, and only afterwards the lav, la'yuchal l'shalcha. Why does it say in the Braisa in this case that he doesn't get Malchus, and he's able to correct it, but the essa comes before the lav? That's the question we're holding at. So the Gemara now gives another answer. Elo marove, so Rava answers, over here it's different. Why? Because kol yomov ba'amoid v'hachzer. His entire life, he has this ongoing essa, that he has to remarry this woman. And over here, you don't get Malchus for this. So as Rashi explains, the reason Rav is saying this is because in the Lashon of the Pasuk, what does it say? V'loi si l'isha, and then it says, la'yuchal l'shalcha kol yomov. His entire life. Why does it add those words, kol yomov? It says, la'yuchal l'shalcha, he's not allowed to divorce her. When it adds kol yomov, his entire life, he's not allowed to divorce her, what it's saying is, and if one did divorce this wife, then kol yomov, his entire life, he has that essa that it said before, even though usually the rule is when the essa says before, it doesn't pater you from the malchus of the lav, but in this case, because it says kol yomov, we learn out from this term that it means that essa does apply kol yomov. Whenever this person divorced her, he would have to go and remarry her. That's why over here, there's no malchus for this. And v'chein, now the Gemara says that the same also, ki asa Ravin, when Ravin came, Omer Rabbi Yechon, he said in the name of Rabbi Yechon himself. We're discussing here what Rabbi Yochanan said. So he said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that Kol Yamav V'Amoid V'Hachsed, that over here, because it says the term Kol Yamav, even though the Esa comes before the Lav, his entire life he has that mitzvah say to remarry her, and therefore there'll be no Malchus. So as the Rishonim point out, the fact that the Ravin is saying this in the name of Rabbi Yochanan itself, what it means is, even though the Gemara before said that they asked Rabbi Yochanan about this, and Rabbi Yochanan retracted from his original statement, but from here you see that Rabbi Yochanan actually went back to what he originally said. Because he came up with this answer and said, oh, in this case it's different, because over here, Kol Yoma. But otherwise, going back to the case of our Mishnah, where a person that's Tomei, that walked into the Beis HaMikdash, over there is going to get Malchus. Even though it says in the Torah Esa that the Yishalchu min HaMachne, but because the Esa comes before the Lav, in such a case you get Malchus. So Rabbi Yochanan actually went back to his original statement that in such a case you get Malchus. Okay, but the Gemara asks in this answer, Rav Papa asks, how could you say that the original statement of Rabbi Yochanan is true, that if there's an Esa in the Torah before the Lav, you would get Malchus? But this kind of Lav is not similar to the Lav that one may not muzzle the animal when it's threshing. The Gemara before said in the beginning of the Perek that because in the Torah when it says Malchus, right afterwards, or right before, the lav that it says right there is the lav of chasima, l'sachsim sherbedishay. We compare all lav into this lav. And so this is a kind of lav that's not compared, because there by the lav of chasima, there's no essa associated with it, but here there is an essa. So even if the essa comes before, but it's still not the same as the lav of chasima. So why would one get malchus? Omalei, so Rava answers, it's not a question. Mishum de kosa berachmona esa yisera, because the Torah adds another mitzvah say before migra gora, that makes it any less than the lav of chasima. It's the same like the lav of chasima. The fact that the Torah adds an esa before doesn't make it any less than that lav or any lav. But if so, ihachi, the Gemara asks, lav shanitik la say nami, by every lav that follows with an essa, and the Torah gives the essa afterwards to correct that lav, where there one does not get malchus. And the reason is, as the Gemara explained before in the beginning of the Perek, because it's not similar to the lav of chasima. But why wouldn't I say the same thing? Leimu, I should say mishum because of rachmana essa yisayir, because the Torah writes an extra essa migra gora. This makes it any less. So why wouldn't I apply the same svara here? Amalei, so Rav answered again, no, that's different. Hahu linetuke lav hudasa. When the Torah is writing the essa after the lav, there it's clear that the kavanah of the Torah is that to connect it or to correct the essa that the person was over, and not to get malchus. That's why it's writing the essa afterwards. After you was over, it's giving you the eitzah what to do, that you merkayim the essa and not malchus. But in a case where the Torah writes the essa first, the kavana of the essa is not that he should be exempt of malchus. He's going to be chayiv malchus, and the essa is a separate thing. It's not going to change the fact that it's a lav, a regular lav, that's compared to the lav of chasima. Okay, now the Gemara, according to Rashi's pshat, goes back to the answer that Rava answered, that even though over here by this case of Einus, the Essa in the Torah is written before the Lav, but nevertheless, Kol Yomov Ba'amoid V'Hachsakoi. Because it says in the Torah the term Kol Yomov, so that means that this is an Essa, that if this person divorced his wife, he's always going to have to remarry her. And therefore, one will not get Malchus. So Gemara asks on that, Frek the Gemara, Honich Lamanda Omar. This is a good answer, according to the opinion that says, Bitloi V'loi Bitloi. That when it comes to such a kind of case where you have a lav and then you have an essa, the only way you can get malchus for the lav is if one nullified or if one broke the possibility of being mekayim the essa to correct that lav. But according to the other opinion that says that it's not, one would get malchus in a case where there's an option of an essa to correct the lav, one would get malchus if he does not fulfill that essa. You don't have to wait until he breaks the possibility or takes away the possibility of fulfilling the essa. What it depends on is, was he mekayim the essa or not? According to this opinion, how are you going to explain the pshat over here? So what is the Gemara saying? So here Rashi explains Barichis what the question of the Gemara is. So this concept of bitloi, v'loi bitloi, kaima v'loi kaima, as we'll see it over here in Amud Beis, the Gemara is going to explain. It's talking about a lav hanitik lasei. So let's say, for example, what's an example of a lav hanitik lasei? So let's say the example of a person that steals, and the Torah says the esse. How do you correct that? That he has to return it. So according to one opinion, when would one get malchus in such a kind of a case? He has an option of an esse to return it. So according to the opinion of bitlei v'loy bitlei, if the person breaks the possibility, he makes it impossible to fulfill that esse. This object that he stole, he burns it, you can't return it anymore. So that now, when he broke that possibility, he was mevatel the possibility of being mekayim the esse, now he's going to get malchus for being over on this lav. Even though it's a lav nitik laseh, but now that he was mevatel the option of fulfilling the esse, so now he gets malchus on the lav. That's one opinion. The other opinion that says kaim v'loy kaim says no, it's different. In a case where a person was over a lav, which is connected to the esse, he has to come to the bezdin, and the bezdin right now gives him the option and says, you have the option of being mekayim the esse. Either be mekayim the esse now, and if you're not going to be mekayim the esse now, you're going to get malchus. So as soon as he's not mekayim the esse, right then, if bezdin gives him the option, he's not mekayim the esse, he's going to get malchus right then. That's the opinion of kaimai v'loy kaimai. So what's the Gemara is asking? What's the Gemara's question over here according to Rashi? The Gemara is saying that regarding this lav, the Gemara explained there that because it says in the Torah kol yomov, what this means is that if a person divorces his wife, he has an option all of his lifetime to be able to fulfill the essa of always remarrying her. That's what the Torah means by kol yomov. So the Gemara says, well, that could only be true according to the opinion that says bitlei v'loy bitlei, which means that we don't bring the person into the bezdin and say, now, you must do it right now. He always has the option to be mekayim the essa. And therefore, only in a case where he would take away that option. For example, over here, when a person has to remarry his wife, let's say he makes a neder. He makes a neder in such a kind of way that he can't be mata this neder, that this woman should be aser b'hanot to him, and now he can't remarry her. So in such a case, he was mevatel the esse, it's impossible for her to remarry her. But otherwise, kol yomov, he's able to remarry her. So then the answer that Rav said before, to taich the pasuk kol yomov, makes sense. But if you go like the opinion that says kaimoi v'loy kaimoi, what you can't say kol yomov. You bring him into the bezdin, and bezdin says you have to remarry her, and if he does not remarry her right now, he should get malchus. So you can't touch the pasuk and say that kol yomov is used as extra words to teach me that here the esse applies even after the lav, that his entire lifetime he has that option to remarry her. According to this opinion, he doesn't have that option his entire lifetime to remarry her. This is Rashi's pshat in the Gemara. Taisus here brings there's another pshat in the Gemara, there's other Rishayim, there's different pshat in this Gemara, but this is how Rashi explains it. Okay, so now the Gemara explains the answer to this is Midi hu taime. According to who are we giving over here this answer, this reason to explain that kol yomov, the term in the Torah kol yomov means that his entire lifetime he can go and remarry this wife, and that's the esse after the lav. And therefore there's no malchus. According to who are we saying this? Elul Rabbi Yochanan. We're coming to explain what Rabbi Yochanan said. Why this is not considered to be a case of a lav shekod mayese, because the kol yomov means that it's after the lav. So if it's going according to Rabbi Yochanan, so ha'amalei Rabbi Yochanan l'tana, Rabbi Yochanan said to the Tana that taught this Braisa that used these terminologies regarding the lav hanitik laseh. So Rabbi Yochanan said to the Tana, Tni bitloi chayev v'loi bitloi pater. Rabbi Yochanan is the one that holds bitloi v'loi bitloi, that by a lav hanitik laseh one has the option always to be mekayim the esse. Only when he's mevatel the esse, then he's going to be chayiv malchus. But otherwise, he always has that option. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, that works. And the Gemara here brings the source over here of where Rabbi Yochanan said this. But before we see the continuation, Rashi here explains that this is all according to Rabbi Yochanan. And therefore, according to Rabbi Yochanan, we can say that a lav shekod moy esse, the halacha will be that you get malchus. But in this case, even though in the Torah it seems to say the case of Einus, even though it says here the esse before the lav, but because it says kol yomov, and Rabbi Yochanan holds bitloi v'loi bitloi, so that kol yomov could be taich literally that he always later has the option to be mekayim the esse, and therefore here you don't get malchus. This is all according to Rabbi Yochanan. But as the Gemara here will bring now, Reish Lakish, there's another opinion about this, that you can't say kol yomov, because he doesn't get that, he wouldn't get that option kol yomov. And therefore, according to Reish Lakish, Rashi says, by a lav shekod may esse, it's the same like every lav and nitik laseh. He disagrees with Rabbi Yochanan, he holds it's just like every lav and nitik laseh, that one gets no malchus for that, because he always has the option of fulfilling the esse. Or kaima v'lekaima. He has the option to fulfill it until Bezdin calls him in. But the point is that according to Reish Lakish, a lav nitik laseh and a lav shekod mayasa is the same thing. That's another machlokes here. Okay, but let's see the source of the inyan. Where did we see that Rabbi Yochanan said this? The Tana Kameh de Rabbi Yochanan, the Tana teaches a brayser in front of Rabbi Yochanan, and he says as follows: Kol mitzvahs lo yisesa sheyesh ba kom aseh. Any mitzvahs lo yisesa, where the Torah then gives you a esa to correct it. Alav anitik laseh. So the lashon of the brayser that he taught was kiyam esa shaba. If you fulfill the esa, then potter. Then it'll be potter, no malchus. Bittul esa shaba. But if it was mevatel the esa, which means that he took away the option of fulfilling this esa, then chayev. Then he's going to be chayev malchus. That was the lashon of the brayser that was taught in front of Rabbi Yochanan. So Amalei, Rabbi Yochanan says to the Tana that taught this in front of him, it doesn't. The two expressions that he said is that they don't go together. My kalmrit. What are you saying? Kiyim potter. First, you say that if he's mekayim the esa, then he would be potter from the malchus. That would sound like loikim, that if he does not fulfill the esa, chayiv will be chayiv malchus even before he was mevatel the option of fulfilling the esa. As I explained before, Rashi says the Bezdin calls him in, and if he doesn't fulfill the esa right away, he's going to be chayiv malchus. That's what it sounds like from the first expression, the Brisa says. But then the Brisa goes on to say, in the version the way that Tana taught it, in front of Rabbi Yochanan, that bitel chayev, only if he's mevatel the option of fulfilling the esa, that'll be chayev malchus. So that sounds like loy bitel, as long as he was not mevatel the option of fulfilling the esa, potter. And then in such a case, he's going to be still potter for malchus. So the language of the Brisa is contradictory. So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan said, "Tani bitloi v'loi bitloi." You have to learn in this brayse in both parts of what it says. You have to learn the term of bitloi v'loi bitloi, meaning if he's mevatel the esa, then he gets malchus. If he's not mevatel the esa, he does not get malchus. That's Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Aimer, however, Reish Lakish says, "Kaimoi v'loi kaimoi." No, the way to learn this brayse is that it all depends on whether he's being Mekayim the Esa now. He's called into Bezdin, he has to be Mekayim the Esa now, and if he's not Mekayim the Esa now, then he's going to get Malchus. That's the Pshat in the Braisa. Okay, so the Gemara is answering over here, Rabbi Yochanan, as we see, Rabbi Yochanan is the one that says, Bitlei v'lei bitlei. So therefore we could say that Kol Yomov, his entire life, this person that divorced his wife and he was not supposed to, as long as he doesn't make a neder that will answer her bahanot to him, he always has the option to remarry her. And that's the Taich of the Pasuk of Kol Yomov. Now the Gemara explains, what's the basis of the machlokes of Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish? It's actually a different point. And that is, Ba'asra Safik HaMiflagi. What they're arguing about is when one gets a warning, and this is a kind of warning where there's a suffix, if he's going to even be over the Slav. In such a case, is this warning even taken seriously? The person that listens to this warning says, I'm not necessarily going to be over the Lav. So is this a valid warning? That's what they're arguing about. Mar Sova, Rabbi Yochanan says, Hasra Safik Shmo Hasra. When one gets a warning, even though it's a doubt whether he's going to be over this lav that he's getting a warning for, this is still a valid Asra. And therefore, as Rashi explains over here in this case, the person is getting the warning for the lav that he's being over. Now, when he's doing the action of the lav, it's a suffix whether this is a Isser or not. Why? Because there is no malchus for this. He's getting a warning, if you're going to do this, you're going to get malchus. But he actually gets no malchus for what he did now, because he always has the option to fulfill the esa. Only when he breaks that option of fulfilling the esa, then is he going to get malchus. So when he does the action that he's doing now, you can't say that it's this action that he gets malchus for. There's still another action that he has to do later to break the option of correcting this lav. So therefore, the warning that he's getting now is only a asra suffix. So the fact that Rabbi Yochanan says that you could learn in the Braisa bitloi v'loi bitloi, and he's saying that when one was mevatel this option of fulfilling the esa to correct the lav, he would get malchus. How does he get malchus? So that's only possible if you hold hasra safik shmei asra, that the warning will be a good warning. Right? So Rashi explains here also another point, that you can't say that maybe he should not get the warning by the when he's over the lav. Let's say the person stole. Maybe don't give him the warning now when he stole, because you don't know yet what he's going to do later. Maybe he's going to return it. Maybe he won't. Give him the lav later when he breaks, when he's mevatel the esa. Maybe that's the time to give him the warning. But Rashi says, no, that's too late. You can't give him the warning then. The actual lav is the action that he's doing now. The stealing. That is the actual lav. The warning has to come now. If you give him the warning later, it's too late. But on the other hand, if you give the warning now, it's a suffix if this is b'chlal iser, because the lav is contingent upon being mevatel the esa. If you learn bitloi, that means that until you mevatel the esa, that's another prat of being over on this lav. So if it's Asra Safik. But Rabbi Yochanan says, Shmei Asra, and therefore he says you would be getting Malchus in such a case. That's Rabbi Yochanan's opinion. But Umar Savar, Reish Lakish's opinion is, Asra Safik Lo Yishma Asra. When one gets a warning and it's a doubt whether this person is taking the warning seriously because he may not be Mevatel the Esa later to correct this law, so that's not Asra at all. So if so, over here when it says in the Brisa that he's getting Malchus for the lav Hanitik Lasei, the reason is because as soon as he's over the lav, this is what the Malchus is for. Even if he has the option of being Mekayim and Esa to correct it, but you don't have to be Mevatel that Esa in order to get Malchus. It's this lav that one gets the Malchus for. The fact that he could be Mekayim and Esa when Bezdin calls him in to correct it, that's not an additional action that he has to do in order to get Malchus. He has an option to be Mesakin, to be Mekayim, but it's not, yet he has to be Mevatel that option of the Ese in order to get Malchus. So therefore, in such a case, the Hasra that he's getting now for the Lav that he's doing is not Hasra Safik, and that's why he would get Malchus. That's Reish Lakish's Pshat. One more point the Gemara says here that explains another case where Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish go with their opinions, with their shittis on this subject. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish follow their reasoning in a different case. Because the Itmar, we learned the machlekes that they had in the case of a shvuah. A person swears and says that I will eat this piece of bread today. That's a long day. And the day passes and he did not eat the bread. Now, when a person's over on a shvuah, he usually gets malchus. But the question is, would he get malchus in such a case? So Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish Damri Tarvaya. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish both said, Ein aloike. Then in such a case, he will not be getting malchus for being over on this shvuah. But they argued about the reason. Rabbi Yochanan says the reason is, Ein aloike, he doesn't get malchus mishum to have a lav shein by maisa. Because this is a lav, but there was no action. Because over here, how is he over the shvuah? By not eating the piece of bread. So he didn't do any action to be over the shvuah, and you don't get a malchus and a lav that has no maisa. V'chalav shein by maisa ain't like an olive. However, Reish Lakish says a different reason why he doesn't get malchus. And because such a kind of case is also considered to be a hasra which is doubtful hasra. Why is this? Because the person gets the hasra in the middle of the day sometime that you better eat this bread. You made a shvuah that you must eat this bread today. He doesn't take that that hasra seriously because he still has many hours in the day. He thinks to himself, oh, I'm not going to eat it now, but I'll eat it in an hour from now. I'll eat it in another hour from now. So he's not taking that straw seriously. There's no action here in front of me right now that I'm doing, that I'm getting a warning for. So that's Asra Safik. Anytime there's a warning regarding something where there's a doubt whether he's going to be over this Isser, that's not taken seriously. So here we see that Reish Lakish holds Asra Safik is not Asra, but Rabbi Yochanan follows his opinion that no, this kind of Asra, if it's a Safik, it would be Asra. But the reason why it doesn't get Malchus is for a different reason, because it's a lav she'ein by maisa, as the Gemara explained.